Welcome, dear friends. Today's podcast draws its inspiration from the spiritual classic Divine Intimacy, Meditations on the Interior Life for Every Day of the Liturgical Year by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene, OCD. For more Carmelite resources, visit the General Curia of the Teresian Carmel at discalcedcarmelite.com. Now let us begin our journey into Father Gabriel's profound spiritual insights.
Welcome back to our exploration of divine intimacy. Over the last few weeks, we've been walking step by step with Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalene as he reveals how we can seek God in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
So far, we've considered seeking God in faith, in love, and in the people around us. Today, we'll be turning to Meditation 21, which focuses on a theme that might seem a bit paradoxical at first.
Yeah.
Seeking God in activity.
Okay.
I think this is something we can all relate to, especially in our modern lives where things move so fast.
It is a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah.
We long for that deep connection with God, that inner peace and stillness.
Right.
But then the demands of our daily lives, all of our responsibilities, seem to pull us in 1,000 different directions.
Yeah.
How can we possibly find God in the midst of all that activity?
Right.
That's the question Father Gabriel helps us to answer in this meditation.
And thankfully, he doesn't leave us to figure it out on our own.
Yeah.
Father Gabriel draws on the wisdom of some incredible spiritual guides. Saints John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and Teresa Margaret. Each of them offers unique insights into how to live an active life without losing sight of our ultimate goal, which is union with God.
One of the key themes that emerges from these saints' teachings is the importance of obedience.
Okay.
St. John of the Cross, for example, gives us this really powerful piece of advice. He says we should never undertake anything, even if it seems like a good and charitable work, unless it's been given to us through obedience.
Okay.
At first glance, you might think, well, doesn't that stifle our freedom and creativity?
Right.
But what St. John of the Cross is getting at is that when we act out of obedience, even the most challenging or seemingly mundane tasks become opportunities for us to align our will with God's will.
That's so beautifully put. It's almost like when we surrender our own desires and preferences, our need to be in control, and we say, okay, God, I'm going to do this because I believe it's what you're asking of me. In that moment, we create space for God to work through us.
Right.
We become instruments in his hands, and even the most ordinary tasks become infused with a deeper meaning and purpose.
And St. Teresa Margaret echoes the sentiment with a quote that I find particularly striking.
Okay.
She says, "When one acts only by obedience, it is God who commands, and he cannot destroy his own work."
Wow.
It's such a beautiful reminder that when we act out of true obedience, our actions become an extension of God's will and we participate in his divine plan.
What I find so helpful about the saints is they weren't just talking about these concepts in a theoretical way.
Yeah.
They actually lived them out in their own lives. St. Teresa of Avila, for instance, is known for her profound mystical experiences, but she also had a very active life.
Yes.
She founded numerous convents and traveled extensively, so she understood the challenges of balancing outward activity with that inner life of prayer and recollection.
Absolutely. And even though she experienced those incredible mystical graces, St. Teresa of Avila constantly emphasized the importance of regularly turning our hearts towards God, even in the midst of good works.
Right.
She reminds us that true recollection isn't about escaping from the world or avoiding activity. It's about cultivating an inner awareness of God's presence in every moment, no matter what we're doing.
And speaking of finding that balance between action and contemplation, I think it's helpful to look at the example of St. Teresa Margaret. She was a Carmelite nun who became prioress of her convent at a very young age. So you can imagine she had a lot of responsibilities on her plate. And yet, despite all the demands of her position, she was known for her deep inner peace and tranquility. One of her resolutions was to never do anything with haste or agitation.
I love that quote. It's
Yeah.
such a practical piece of advice that we can all apply to our lives, no matter how busy we are. It reminds me of the story of Martha and Mary from Luke chapter 10. You remember how Martha was busy serving while Mary sat at Jesus' feet, listening to his words? It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that Martha was doing something wrong, that she was being too worldly in her focus on serving. But That's not really the point of the story.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's not that activity is bad.
Right.
Or that we should all become hermits and spend our days in solitary prayer.
Right.
I think what Jesus is highlighting in that story is the importance of finding that balance.
Yeah.
We need both Martha's diligence and Mary's attentiveness.
Exactly. What God cautions us against is the anxiety, the inner turmoil, and the distractions that can easily creep in when we're busy. It's when we allow our tasks to consume us, to pull us away from his presence, that we start to lose sight of what truly matters.
And that brings us to a really important point that Father Gabriel emphasizes in Meditation 21, the idea of examining our motivations. He encourages us to engage in what he calls a colloquy, an intimate conversation with God, where we can honestly reflect on why we're doing the things we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Are our actions driven by a sincere desire to fulfill God's will? Or are we seeking personal satisfaction? Are we motivated by love, or are we driven by self-love? It can be a bit uncomfortable to look at our motivations so honestly, but Father Gabriel assures us that it's essential for our spiritual growth.
He's right. It's only when we bring those hidden motivations to light that we can start to disentangle ourselves from the ones that are holding us back, the ones that are keeping us from that deep union with God that we long for.
This reminds me of how, when you look at a tangled up ball of yarn, it can seem impossible to figure out where to even begin to untangle it. But once you find the loose end, you can start to slowly and carefully work your way through the knots.
What a great analogy. It's the same with our motivations. Sometimes it's just a matter of identifying that one little thread, that desire for recognition, that need to be in control, that fear of failure. And then we can start to gently unravel it, surrendering it to God and asking for his grace to purify our intentions. It's a process for sure. And I think one of the things that makes it so challenging is that sometimes our motivations are mixed. We might start out with a good intention, a desire to serve God, but then our ego gets involved and suddenly we're more concerned with how we're perceived or whether we're getting the credit we deserve.
That's such an important point. It's so easy to fool ourselves into thinking we're acting out of pure motives.
Right.
But often there's a subtle self-seeking element mixed in there. And I think Father Gabriel helped us to see that that's okay. It's part of being human. The key is to be aware of it, to bring those shadows into the light and to surrender them to God.
Absolutely. It's in that surrender that we truly find freedom. It's not about becoming emotionless or indifferent to the outcome of our actions,
Right.
but rather about detaching from that ego-driven need to control everything.
And that's where I think the concept of holy indifference comes in. I know that can be a tricky term to wrap our heads around because it sounds like it's about not caring. But it's really the opposite. It's about caring so much about God's will that we're willing to let go of our own preferences and desires.
Yes, it's about shifting our focus from the results to the intention. We do our best. We offer our actions as a gift to God, but we detach from the outcome knowing that ultimately it's in his hands.
This reminds me of a story I heard about a monk who was working in the garden. A visitor came up to him and asked, "What would you do if you knew you're going to die tomorrow?" The monk replied, "I would continue planting these seeds."
That's a beautiful illustration of holy indifference. It's not about becoming passive or giving up on our responsibilities. It's about doing what needs to be done to the best of our ability with a heart filled with love for God, regardless of the circumstances.
It makes me think of that famous quote from St. Augustine, "Love God and do what you will." I think what he's saying is that when our actions are truly rooted in love for God, they become an expression of that love, a way of drawing closer to him, no matter what form those actions take.
And that's the key, isn't it? Seeking God in activity is not about abandoning our responsibilities or retreating from the world. It's about transforming our everyday lives into a continuous offering of love to God.
It's about finding that delicate balance between Martha's diligence and Mary's attentiveness, bringing a spirit of contemplation into the midst of our daily activities. It's about being fully present to whatever we're doing it with love and offering it all to God.
And as we cultivate that holy indifference, that detachment from the outcome, we'll find that even the most challenging tasks can become opportunities for spiritual growth, for deepening our union with God. It's like a hidden treasure waiting to be unearthed in the midst of our everyday lives.
I love that image of a hidden treasure. It reminds us that God is present everywhere, even in the most ordinary moments, if we just open our hearts to see him. It's like the pearl of great price that we're willing to sacrifice everything for.
And the beautiful thing is we don't have to go on some grand pilgrimage or retreat to find this treasure. It's right here in the midst of our daily lives, waiting for us to discover it.
In the dishes, we wash the emails, we send the errands, we run the conversations we have in all these seemingly mundane activities. God is present, waiting for us to turn our hearts towards him.
Father Gabriel really emphasizes this in Meditation 21. He reminds us that every moment, every task can be an opportunity to connect with God, to deepen our relationship with him if we approach it with the right intention.
It's a beautiful way to live, isn't it? To see every moment as a gift, every task as an offering, every encounter as a chance to reflect God's love to the world.
It is. And as we continue to delve into this meditation, I think we'll find that Father Gabriel offers us some very practical guidance on how to cultivate this way of life, how to make seeking God in activity a reality in our own lives.
It really is a beautiful vision, this idea of our whole lives becoming a kind of prayer, a continuous offering to God. But I think for many of us, the challenge is bridging the gap between that ideal and the reality of our everyday lives.
Right.
How do we actually put these teachings into practice, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or just plain exhausted?
That's a great question. And it's one that I think all of us who are trying to live a more intentional spiritual life grapple with. There's no magic formula.
Yeah.
But I think Father Gabriel offers us some really helpful guidance in this meditation. He reminds us that exterior duties, no matter how demanding, cannot disturb our interior union with God if they are embraced with recollection and obedience.
So it's not about trying to escape from our responsibilities.
Precisely. And one of the things that I find so inspiring about St. Teresa Margaret is her emphasis on calmness and self-control, even in the midst of a very busy and demanding life. We talked earlier about her resolution to never do anything with haste or agitation. And I think that's such a powerful practice for us to try to cultivate in our own lives.
It's so easy to get caught up in that rush, that sense of urgency that pervades our modern world.
Right.
But the saints remind us that true peace and joy are not found in frantic activity, but in that deep inner stillness that comes from being rooted in God's presence.
And I think the concept of holy indifference can be really helpful in this regard. Remember, it's not about becoming apathetic or passive, but about detaching from the outcome of our actions, surrendering our need to control everything, and simply focusing on doing God's will in each moment.
It's about trusting that God is working through us, even when we can't see the results, even when things don't go according to our plans. And in that surrender, in that letting go, we find a freedom and a joy that transcends the ups and downs of our everyday lives.
I think that's such an important point, especially for those of us who are involved in ministry or service to others. It's easy to get caught up in the desire to see tangible results, to make a difference, to fix things. But the saints remind us that ultimately it's God who is doing the work. Our role is simply to be his instruments, to offer ourselves to him with humility and love, and to trust that he will use us according to his divine plan.
And sometimes the greatest results are the ones that we can't see. The subtle shifts in our hearts, the growth in love and compassion, the deepening of our relationship with God.
That's right. And so, as we conclude our reflection on Meditation 21, I encourage you to continue to ponder this concept of seeking God in activity, of bringing a spirit of prayer and recollection into every aspect of your day. I think you'll find that it's not about adding more things to your to-do list, but about transforming the way you approach everything you do.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this meditation. It's been such a rich and insightful conversation.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening, praying, and being part of this journey. Until next time, may God bless us and keep us close to his heart. Take care and see you soon.